Welcome to another CEO/founder wisdom pod. We have both with us today. Devinder Chauhan is his name. He's CEO and founder at Macuject. Devinder's a really cool guy, and I really loved what he's all about. He was telling me some stats about the southern part of Australia and like how much eye surgery he used to do. Precisely, I'm going to try to pronounce that right, Devinder. So vitreoretinal surgeons. That's what Devinder is. So he studied into that, plus trained a bunch of people on how to do that. It's got a social aspect to the business, which I really love. And yeah, Macuject is pretty much about this. We're going to talk about macular degeneration today and even AI. So I'm quite excited about that one. This podcast brought to you by podfire.com. If you want to start, scale, be invited to a podcast like this one, or even have sponsors for your podcasts are basically a gold mine, apart from the fact that they help you learn, meet cool people like Devinder, folks that might become part of your community for life. Basically, how amazing is that? And by the way, you'll be gaining subscribers and a bunch of views, and that's more clients for you in the end. So podfire.com if you want to start, scale, be invited to podcast. Dev, I'm really glad to have you on today. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and Macuject?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Charles. Thanks for inviting me. I was from, as you can hear from my accent, born in England, and I now live in Australia, in Melbourne. I started by doing medicine in the UK, became a doctor, decided to do ophthalmology, that's eye treatments, and then as a result of that, ended up specializing in retina conditions. And these are, and then that's really two parts of that. And one is known as medical retina, and the other one's surgical retina. In surgical retina, we do operations on retinal detachments and bad diabetic eye disease. But the majority of my work now has been in medical retina. And that's where basically my job boils down a lot of the time to giving people injections in their eyes, which makes most people wince. It makes you wince. But essentially, it's a way of preventing people from going blind.
Which is quite important, right? Like vision as humans, can't imagine this world without seeing. And I mean, that's how grateful should I be just to have that, one. And I have good vision as well. So thanks to my parents and my genes, I think vision is really important. Pre-podcast, you and I were talking about this new tropic that has curcumin and black pepper in it. Well, the same company, they're called Neurohacker, by the way. I highly recommend them. I don't think they ship in Australia, but they have a vision supplement, which I found really interesting as a niche. You take this supplement and it improves your vision. I'm pretty sure it works because sometimes I've taken some of these supplements and I really saw a clearer vision apart from microdosing psilocybin. When I did that, I saw brighter colors, which was quite interesting. I want to talk about Macuject, but first, just as an introduction for those that don't know Dr. Dev, it's also interesting that you don't have the doctor before your name, while a bunch of people call themselves doctor on LinkedIn. Why did you decide to do that?
That's a really good question. I think it's basically fundamentally because I don't define myself by my job. I think there are a lot of doctors who will, within a few minutes of meeting them socially, they're a doctor. I don't, because I think they define themselves that way. I am a doctor, and if someone wants to know, then I'll tell them, but I don't think it's an important part of my being. And particularly because I'm transitioning out of medicine in terms of seeing patients daily and moving into the entrepreneurial world. And I've been doing that slowly over the last 5 years. And that's essentially through Macuject.
That to me is the definition of humble, because I don't consider myself to be a humble person, because I think that a lot of people are humble because they like to be told that they're humble. But anyway, that's my weird contrarian brain. But if I ask my own brain what a doctor is, my granddad was a dentist. We used to call him Dr. Laurent Fréchette. I have a lot of him in me. What's a doctor? It's someone that takes care of someone. It's definitely a leader. It's someone that is capable of showing empathy to their patient, and it's someone that does good. In my eyes, it's a very noble profession, so much so that I'd love to invest at least 25% of my time building a biotech and saving lives. It's really inspiring what you do. So thank you for coming on today. That what I was about to start with was that at some point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Melbourne area of Australia, you were responsible for 30% of eye surgery in there.
No, not true. I'm responsible for 8% roughly of eye
8%.
injections. Yeah.
Eye injections. Okay. I got that totally wrong, but 8% is still very
It's a high
significant.
number.
Yeah. At how much surgeries a year is that?
So it's roughly about 10,000 eye
No
injections.
way. 10,000? So how does one do that?
Yeah. So essentially, treating these are patients who have blinding conditions where we treat them with regular, ongoing, lifelong injections into the eye. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt. It's uncomfortable. We put anesthetic drops in and then give them their injections. The purpose of that is to initially, in many people, it improves their vision a bit, but then it's about maintaining it, because the choice is have injections and see, or don't have injections and go legally blind very quickly. So the way we used to do them was very time consuming, and it still is for many people. That's actually why I built Macuject, in order to make it more efficient, but at the same time to maintain the quality and consistency of treatment. And so Macuject's software in the cloud, it's clinical decision support software that helps people make actually their own decisions faster and more consistently. And the really cool outcome of that, on top of the fact you can treat more patients, is that you actually get better visual results as well. So people actually see better. My patients see better when I use Macuject than I did before.
I still want to wrap my mind around, and I fully understand the problem and the fix here, but that is like 25 surgeries a day. How does one do that?
No,
Multiple
it's even
clinics?
more than that. So it's more than that. So yesterday I treated about 100 people in one day. It sounds really bad because it sounds like you're not giving people the care they need. But when you're in your 80s or 90s and your daughter has taken time off work to take you to a clinic, and you're on your 37th or 137th injection of the eye, you don't want to be there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours. You want to go in, have what you need, and leave. And so essentially we have a team of about 8 people that just moves through very efficiently. Everybody gets all the tests they need. They get the opportunity to explain whether they've got new symptoms. We check them if they've got a problem, but the vast majority of people go through a fairly standard routine where they have a scan of their eye, that then they get the vision tested, they have questions asked, and then when I see them in 2 separate rooms, and I walk between the 2 rooms because I'm faster than most people over 80, and basically just look at the screen and I can see everything I need to know to make my decision on the computer screen. In fact, about 1 in 10 patients is looking at the same screen, because by now they're actually looking at Macuject 2 and understand what the scans mean and understand what's happening with their vision just from looking at the software.
Wow. I'm like overwhelmed by all of this information. So like per surgery, it took like 5 to 10 minutes, I guess.
It's a bit less than that with the patient. And that's, yeah, like I said, I initially used to feel a little guilty about it being so short a time. But there are patients who come in, there's nothing different, nothing's changed. They're quite happy to come in and say, hi, yep, it's all the same. I'm happy to have my injection. I'll see you in 6 weeks. But there are obviously some who take longer. So there's some patients who take 10 or more minutes for a routine injection, and others who just take a couple because you walk in and you know what's going on and they're happy to see you. And it's all about relationships as well, because by the time you see, these are people I'm seeing literally more often than their children sometimes. Okay, because they come back every 4 weeks for an injection in an eye, and they've been doing so for years. I think I told you before that I have a patient who's had over 205 now injections in one eye.
That is somewhat tragic, but So some of these folks, right, they have dementia. It's proven that some folks that do not hear well are more susceptible to the symptoms of dementia. Imagine when you don't see, that's like 2-3x worse. So you would have to show extra empathy in there. Must have made you a super patient doctor. But at the other side of this doctor, there's a Devinder.
Yeah.
Did you almost face burnout at some point?
Um, I think if I just did that job, I would burn out. And it's like the classic. So I'm nearly 58. So the classic midlife or crisis or whatever people have is for a whole bunch of reasons. But mine, if it wasn't for Macuject, would have been that I just got good at what I'm doing and have been able to do it for years, and it's just repetitive. So by doing Macuject, which is much more stimulating in many other ways, I've managed to avoid that whole situation.
Okay. I can relate to you because I do this, but for podcasts. So I'm doing like brain surgeries. Like, hopefully, if people have a good time with me on a daily basis, they are left better off. It's like a spa for the brain, for the
Mm,
mindset and
mm,
insights, because I interview 10, 15, 20 CEOs a day. So I can somewhat relate to that. And if you would ask me the same questions, I'd tell you, no, I just like what I do. But there's way more diversity in what I do. In your case was
mm.
routine stuff. Bottom line, the problem is definitely there. A lot of quantity, a lot of operations, and it's like I can do it's better than that. It's like, oh, am I crazy for just operating 30, 40, 50, 100 people a day? Can't a machine do it? It's like the classic case. And guess what? It's the same um, problem that I'm having with this podcast. And now I
Yeah,
want to have a Charles AI that will run these interviews apart from people, right? You've probably thought about
yeah.
the people solution too, which leads us to Macuject. Tell us what you
Mm.
want to do there and how can you do that at scale and better.
So when I started Macuject, it was a classic founder that, and also an expert founder in their field, who just thought they knew what they needed to do, and that everybody, once they created this thing, would understand how important it was and just use it. I didn't know anything about the Valley of Death, and that's the tough part, the whole making it a commercially viable thing. So what Macuject is, it deals with the fact that when I see patients, I have to look both at a whole set of images historically on one piece of software, and then a whole electronic medical record on another, and take all this information, put it into my head and collate it, and then make a decision. And if you're doing that repeatedly over a course of a day, it's just hard. Well, it's not difficult. It's just a lot of repetitive work. So what Macuject does is it combines AI to look at images, find the abnormalities and measure them. And that feeds into a decision tree. And the decision tree is hard coded, but really importantly, it's configurable by the doctors. So they can choose which drugs they want to use when and how. And what that means is that when they get their recommendation, a few clicks, and then there's a recommendation of what the treatment is, which is their own recommendation to themselves faster and more consistently than normal. And what that then, but they can override that. So the doctor's in complete control. It's just that the sort of like image and data crunching has happened before they start. So in another way of looking at it is not necessarily that I can see more patients, but some doctors will see the same number of patients, but have more time with the patient. And that's what Macuject does now. It's HIPAA and SOC 2 compliant, which means it's able to, it's secure and maintains people's privacy. And we're going to be going to the US this year, the end of this year and beginning of next, mainly because there's now treatments for the other type of macular degeneration that we haven't been able to treat ever before. So there are 2 drugs that came out this year, which are also injections in the eye regularly, but therefore a type of macular degeneration where many patients, the ones who would benefit most, don't have any symptoms. So there's a whole series of problems there, which are not just about efficiency. There's a whole series of problems which are about getting access to treatment of people in the community. So our software is going to be working in optometry, general ophthalmology. So that's where patients are not even patients in optometry, they're just people. But as they go in and out of optometry clinics to look at their glasses, we'll be helping, making sure that we pick up patients early who would potentially benefit from treatment, help them move along into the correct pathways for the retina specialists to see and then treat, and then make sure that we can, that both the retina specialists and the patients can see the treatment effect. Because there's a whole bunch of things to do with these drugs that are different from most and make life very difficult during the treatment process.
So you split your time nowadays between the startup and actually still making surgeries, right?
Yeah, it's shifted. So just before the pandemic, we received a government grant in the end of 2019, and in January 2020, I sat down with some people to plan how we were going to spend the grant over 2 years. It was a big grant from the Australian government, and I just suddenly realized how much work there was to be done, and was thinking, I'm going to have to take a sabbatical. When am I going to do that? How long is it going to be? And then COVID hit. So we're one of the few companies that has benefited significantly from COVID because it gave us all extra time. And what that taught me was that when COVID began to ease off and I started having to see more patients, it was, oh, actually, I need more time. So I've actually stopped doing the real surgery, the retina surgery in operating rooms in order to make more time. So I've shifted from 80 doctoring, 20 Macuject to pretty much the other way around. So I'm now only seeing patients about 5 days a month, and the rest of it, so I'm packing it in and doing it effectively. And the rest of the time I'm working on Macuject, which is obviously not 9 to 5. It spreads all over.
Were there some withdrawal symptoms of like not helping people anymore, or just thinking you're not helping these people anymore?
On a very selfish level, there were no withdrawals because I got to the point where I was good at the surgery. I'd been there, done that. From the point of view of helping people, I think that's the sort of thing where you can't always really look at that kind of change until you step a distance away. The logical answer to that is that through Macuject, we're going to be able to help many, many more people than even if I saw 100 people a day, 7 days a week. I'm still going to be helping more through Macuject.
Right. And do you feel that a machine could actually do that work? Is that the vision, the ultimate vision behind Macuject?
I think, I was telling you earlier on about how some patients take pretty routine and others take more time. I think having tools like Macuject will mean that we, as the specialist doctors who are better at the edge cases, will have more time for those who need more time. So the really quick, come in for your 47th injection and the 48th and the 49th and nothing's changed, those people potentially could be treated in a more efficient way that doesn't necessarily need me, or that I can be accelerated through, which is what we're currently doing. But it then also means that those where they say something and you suddenly realize, hang on a second, tell me more about that, because they're actually saying something that makes you realize that they might have another problem. So for example, if someone says, yeah, I had my vision went completely black for about 2 seconds last week, and it did it a few more times, that's a serious issue. That's not to do with the injections. It's something else. But if you don't have the opportunity on time to have that and listen to it and then act on it, that's going to result in problems. So I think it's going to facilitate a combination of efficiency and being able to spend the time necessary on those who need it. That's what it's going to be doing.
Do you think there could be an AI on the front end that would ask the questions instead of the receptionist when they arrive to the clinic?
Absolutely. That already exists in some clinics. I think the thing you're talking about is the people taking the tests. More and more tests are now becoming autonomous and easier to do by less skilled people. The standard questioning is easy. As I was just saying, the questioning that's more pointed is the stuff that we are trained to do, and that's essentially where it would not take over, at least for a very long time.
think an AI could still be good at distinguishing stuff because it takes the etymology of words and could say, oh, statistically speaking, that person is from there. Here's their background. Here's what they mean by this word. And that is way better than a doctor's brain that have a specific experience using that word for that meaning. And then I can obviously, that my brain is telling me that, oh, we could
Yeah.
eventually have a Neuralink that would have them understand really what happened and explain themselves better, because a lot of people have challenges explaining themselves,
Yeah.
especially if they're cognitively impaired.
I don't doubt that. I think that we are still very much like autonomous vehicles in that stage where it's about assistance. The time when we have purely autonomous vehicles will probably be around the time that we're talking about here. And that's not, just doesn't seem to be happening yet. And a lot of it's about, I think I've seen a change literally in the last 18 months of people's potential willingness to accept the role of AI in healthcare. It's not, it's just still not safe. And I don't think it's safe enough to be doing that. There are, as you know, lots of inherent biases and other aspects that we just don't understand well enough to let the thing run free. I think we're still in that assisting, it's an augmentation of doctors. That's the way we are right now, and will
I
be for a
think
few years.
the hallucination part needs to be like almost completely removed. In the medical field, there needs to be a human validating these things. But
Yeah.
I think people complain nowadays because they don't give the tool enough data. They just expect that all the time it will have a magical response for your crappy question. People do not know how to ask good questions. They don't know how to feed it the right data, and hence you get a pretty bad response. Typical human nature there, like blaming the thing on the technology while it's clearly mostly a human error. Anyway, more on that later. I want to ask you, what is the missing step for you to bring this technology to the Australian market and then to the world?
The missing steps right now, there's is essentially three. There's establishing solidly the product market fit. So we're currently building the dry macular degeneration product, which we are going to be doing in collaboratively with end users. The second part is there's the commercial business model. The business model has to be adaptive, and we're in the process of testing that, validating our assumptions. And thirdly, there's a significant and very important, I think it's very important, I'm not saying it's just important for us, it's important exists, regulatory pathway. So that's the path we're going to have to go through regulatory bodies to test our AI for the machine learning, for the images, and make sure that works well. Because the thing, like I was talking about with autonomous vehicles, is people trust the Tesla to go around the corner at a high speed right now. People just trust it. And we need to be in a position where people trust it to do that, but still have their hands on the wheels to deal with issues if necessary. That's where we are right now. And we need to generate that trust through good quality AI that's been regulated, that works and does what users want. That's essentially what, it's not a hurdle, it's just a pathway to getting there.
Love it. Where can people find out more about you, Devinder, and about Macuject?
So Macuject.com has some information. Best way is actually to talk with us. So go to Macuject with a C.com and contact us, and we'll be in touch and talk to you more and see how we might potentially work together.
And I am Charles Cormier, your host of founderwisdompodcast.com. If you want to start scale, be invited to podcast, podfire.com. That was Devinder Chauhan.